Yes, good?
No.
Okay, well, I'm glad I could help.
You don't help.
Have a lovely time. Goodbye. Next. Hello, settler. On behalf of the New Zealand Company, welcome to New Zealand.
Yeah, right. I was told there was going to be a house here waiting for me, but there's nothing there.
Well, okay, so the first thing to know about this is it's not our fault, okay? Now, we definitely sold you a real house that does exist. But what I think must have happened is after you bought it, someone probably came along and just picked it up and stole it away. Most likely a giant. Yes, absolutely. There are giants in New Zealand. Did you not know that? Well, we should really put that in the brochure. Damn you, giants! Damn you and your giant sticky fingers! Stop stealing our houses! We want to live in them! Just give them back! Well, as you can see, not much we can do about that, so... Okay, sorted? Right. Next.
No. I think I know what's happening here.
Yes.
You guys
Giants?
you guys sold me a fake house that never existed, knowing full well that when I came here, I'd have no legal recourse because we're outside of British law.
Okay. I will admit I wasn't 100% truthful about the giant thing.
Yeah, I knew it.
They don't steal houses.
No.
They blow them away. Out into space! That's where your house is. If you go out at night and look up into the night sky and you see a shooting star, well, that could be your house, boy. Then, make a wish. You know what I would wish for? A new house.
Come on, mate. Just admit the house never existed.
I will admit that the giants are very jealous of us, and they want to get into our houses, but they're too big, so when they open the door and they can't fit in, they get so mad, so they smush our houses. Smush, 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 smush,
Okay.
and that's where your house is. It's in the ground.
Smushed, yeah.
Yes.
I think it's much more likely that you guys just lied to me and there never were any houses. Admit it.
Well, look. Okay, listen. You seem like a man who won't be trifled with, so here's what I'll do. I'm going to see if I can get you an audience with the giant king. His name is Gorf, and he owes me a favor because I pulled a needle from his foot. Gorf! It is Wakefield, and I demand a meeting with you in your giant fudge castle. I won't take no for an answer. Oh, good boy, Wakefield. Next. Yes, hello. As you can see, we're quite flat tack at the moment, but we should be able to get to your complaints in about 150 years. Does that work?
Most British settlers in the early days were brought over by this guy, Edward Gibbon Wakefield. Back in England, Wakefield abducted a girl and forced her to marry him, but he was caught and sent to prison. And while he was in prison, he thought of the idea of colonizing New Zealand. That's true. That actually happened. This guy started the colonization of New Zealand. This guy. Him. This piece of
A citizen's handbook.
Europe had known about New Zealand since the Dutch East India Company stumbled across it in the 1600s on a racist adventure for jewels. But it was considered a bit too out of the way to be worth it for European ships, so they left it alone for a while. And then, in the 1700s, Captain Cook popped by, apparently for scientific reasons, and he used his scientific guns to kill locals and wrote a lot of notes in his little science book about how nice it would be if the English started living here. And when his science notes got back to England, the flow of foreigners making the long journey to the Pacific began. Firstly, it was just sealers getting dropped off around the coast to beat up seals. Then it was loggers as well, who came to cut down trees and haul them away on big tree boats. And in the early 1800s, whalers arrived, and they set up stations near where the whales hung out, so they could catch them and chop them up into bits. Between sailing, logging, and whaling, the Brits were a real triple threat to the environment. Most of the time, these foreigners got on well with local iwi. Rangatira would sign off on deals for land in return for access to cool European technology, like nails, frickin' nails. And marriages between Maori and Europeans became more common as trading relationships between the two cultures became more important. It was all very win-win. Word spread around the world about the opportunities New Zealand had to offer. Thanks to Wakefield's false advertising, the British started rushing over like it was a Mrs. Brown's Boys live tour. And then someone discovered there was a bunch of gold in Otago, and people from China, America, and even Australia came over to try and get rich quick. Then someone else discovered Cody gum was useful for stuff that you use Cody gum for. And people from Dalmatia showed up to work with Maori in the gum fields up north. Aotearoa was becoming more diverse by the second. But unfortunately, like television in the 90s, the British weren't huge fans of diversity. Lots of Brits were very into the idea of racial supremacy and refused to accept that they might be equal to everyone else. And unfortunately for everyone else, white Brits were the ones whose population was going up the quickest. By 1858, the settler population caught up to the native population, and then it kept going. And as the balance of power started to tip towards the British, abiding by tikanga Māori became less important for the settlers and the government they'd just thrown together. Deals that were once negotiated in good faith became more forceful and underhanded. Land deals stopped being mutually beneficial. In some cases, the settler government didn't even pretend to hold up their end of the bargain. They allegedly bought most of Te Waipounamu off Ngāi Tahu on the condition that Ngāi Tahu could hold on to 3.5 million acres of it, and would also get some schools and hospitals built for them. But unfortunately, the settlers were massive flakes, so none of those things happened. The settlers took all of Ngāi Tahu's land, which sucks because land is power, and if you can't look after your people, it's pretty hard to fight back. In addition to ripping people off by lying, the settler government invented the Native Land Court to rip people off with made-up laws as well, because apparently, back then, inventing a new court was just a thing that you could do. The Native Land Court forced iwi and hapu to register their land in a weird new system invented by the English. But to register it, hapu had to travel to the court for weeks at a time and just leave their crops behind to die. Not registering your land sucked because it meant it wasn't in the system and random Brits could just wander in and set up camp. But registering your land sucked too because it meant that a whole hapu's whenua was now officially owned by just 10 people, which meant that instead of convincing 200 people to part with their land, Pākehā land buyers only had to convince 10 people, one at a time. It almost seems like the whole system was built to make it easy for land to slip from Māori hands into Pākehā hands, and very hard for it to go the other way. It all really sucks. Not even registering your land and not selling it was enough to keep it, because the thing that really sucks about the British settlers is that they weren't going to stop until they got their hands on pretty much everything. So when their rigged legal system wasn't taking land from Māori fast enough, the settlers turned to war. There had been battles over dodgy deals since the 1840s, like in Northland, Waido, Wellington, Whanganui, Taranaki, and everywhere else the Brits decided to settle. But things got way worse in the 1860s when this guy got into power. George Grey was one of the British Empire's most bloodthirsty hitmen, and in 1861 he was wheeled out from colonial South Africa to start a war in colonial New Zealand. Grey assembled an army from across the empire, as well as local settler militias, and marched south from Auckland to invade the Waikato and punish Waikato iwi for the crime of not selling their land to settlers fast enough, which is obviously not a proper reason to start a war, which makes him, yes, one of these. As the army set off from Auckland, Grey informed hapu on good farmland like Ihumātao that they were in rebellion against the Queen, which was news to them, and then he informed them that as punishment, he was confiscating their land. At the end of his illegal war, Grey had burned down villages, torn up gardens, devastated local Māori, and confiscated 1.2 million acres of Waikato land, which he sold to settlers to pay for the war. 100 years after signing Te Tiriti, enshrining tangata whenua's rights to full chiefly authority over their people, resources and land, British settlers had taken 95% of Māori land. It sucks really bad. The whole thing just really, really sucks really, really bad. But it's something you need to know. After all, you're a citizen of New Zealand. Sorry.
A citizen